She was one of the most barbaric and hated women of the 21st century, but her downfall still shocked the world. Elena Ceausescu was the mother of the nation of Romania, the wife of the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu for years, and she had lived a life of immense luxury and opulence and grandeur. But in the December of 1989, she and her husband were brought crashing from power. Her husband was the official face of the regime. To millions of Romania, Elena became a symbol of the cruelty and corruption of the country's government, and she was incredibly arrogant. Her rise from humble beginnings to the most prominent and richest woman in the country revealed what she was motivated by: ambition, and was obsessed by power, and she would do anything to get more, including invoke a huge amount of suffering to people. For someone who was known as the mother of the nation, she had absolutely no remorse or respect for her people. And today we look at Romania's most hated woman. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Elena Ceausescu was born on January 7th, 1916, in the village of Peteți in Danvita country. Her early life was unremarkable. She came from a poor peasant family and had little education, and Elena struggled academically and dropped out of secondary school, later taking a job in a textile factory in Bucharest. It was here, in the late 1930s, that she became involved with communist circles. She met Nicolae Ceausescu, a fellow party member, and they married in 1947. As the communist regime solidified power in Romania under Soviet influence, Nicolae climbed steadily through the ranks to the party. Elena, by his side, was determined not to be left behind. Her ambition, however, far outstripped her abilities. She had no formal scientific training, yet she would later style herself as one of the greatest chemists in the country. Through nepotism and political influence, Elena fabricated an academic career, collecting titles, doctorates and awards that masked her lack of knowledge. And by the 1970s, Nicolae Ceausescu had built a grotesque cult of personality around himself, portraying Romania as a nation thriving under his genius leadership. Elena positioned herself at the heart of this cult. She was not content with being the dictator's wife. She wanted to be worshipped in her own right. Propaganda depicted her as the mother of the nation, the savant of polymer chemistry, and a guiding light for Romanian women. Her image appeared alongside Nicolae's in the classroom, factories and offices, and every newspaper and newsreel glorified her supposed brilliance. School children recited poems in her honour, and television broadcasts fawned over her scientific achievements. Behind this facade, however, Romanians knew the truth. Elena was vain, ignorant, and quick to rage. She was infamous for publicly berating ministers and officials, often in humiliating terms, and her colleagues in the party referred to her behind closed doors as Kodoi, a mocking nickname that came from her mispronunciation of CO2, the chemical formulation for carbon dioxide. One of Elena's greatest crimes was the scale of corruption she fostered. The Ceausescu family operated Romania like a private estate. Their children, siblings and in-laws held powerful positions across government, industry and diplomacy. Elena used her influence to install loyalists and relatives into top posts, regardless of competence. She rewarded obedience with privileges, foreign travel, access to luxury goods and comfortable lifestyles, whilst ordinary citizens queued for hours to buy bread, meat or fuel. At the same time, Elena and Nicolae lived in lavish palaces, hoarding wealth and enjoying important delicacies. Their contrast with the daily misery of Romanians, who endured power cuts, food rationing and freezing apartments, bred deep resentment. By the early 1980s, Romania was plunged into one of the darkest periods in its modern history. Nicolae Ceausescu's decision to repay the nation's foreign debt in full led to extreme autostree measures. Food, electricity, heating and medicine were rationed to the point of near starvation. Malnutrition spread amongst children, infant mortality rates rose, and the hospitals lacked basic supplies. Elena, as first Deputy Prime Minister and one of the most powerful figures in the state, played a central role in enforcing these policies. She supported her husband's vision of self-reliance and joined him in blaming ordinary citizens for shortages. Rather than easing restrictions, she ordered harsher punishments for those who resisted or attempted to trade on the black market. Meanwhile, she indulged her love of luxury. Elena demanded French perfumes, designer clothes, and a constant supply of imported goods. When Romanians froze in unheated apartments, the Ceausescus kept their residences warm and stocked with food. The hypocrisy deepened the hatred directed at her. Elena Ceausescu's reputation was also shaped by her arrogance and cruelty. She relished humiliating subordinates and expected absolute obedience. Accounts from former officials described her as short-tempered, foul-mouthed and vindictive. She enjoyed insulting ministers in front of others, calling them donkeys or idiots. Her vanity was notorious, and Elena despised intellectuals and scientists, yet she demanded their respect. She collected honorary degrees and memberships in foreign academies, often secured through diplomatic pressures or outright bribery. And at international events, she insisted on being addressed as Comrade Doctor Engineer. Romanians saw through the charade. They knew she lacked education and expertise, and her insistence on titles became a national joke. Even in whispers, people mocked her presentations. Another reason Elena was despised was her association with the secretariat Romanians' brutal secret police. Alongside Nicolae, she encouraged an atmosphere of paranoia. The Securiate maintained a vast network of informers, monitoring conversations, letters, and even jokes, and dissent was punished with imprisonment, torture, or exile. Elena took an active role in overseeing security matters, often pressing for harsh punishments, and she distrusted everyone, including senior party members. Her obsession with loyalty contributed to purges and demotions, creating a climate of fear, even at the highest levels of government. For ordinary Romanians, this meant living under constant surveillance. A careless world could lead to arrest. People associated Elena not only with corruption and arrogance, but with the machinery of repression itself. By the late 1989, the Ceausescu's regime was crumbling. Revolutions had swept across Eastern Europe, toppling communist governments in Poland, Hungary, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and in Romania, discontent reached boiling point in December when protests in Timisoara were violently suppressed, leaving scores dead. Elena's role in these final days further cemented her hatred. During the protest, she urged Nicolae not to back down and demanded that demonstrators be crushed without mercy. She was heard shouting for troops to fire on crowds, earning her the nickname the Red Queen. When Nicolae attempted to rally support with a mass rally in Bucharest on December 21st, the event collapsed into chaos. Television cameras captured the moment when the crowd turned against him, booing and jeering. Elena, standing at his side, waved her hands angrily and hissed at Nicolae to control the crowd. Millions of Romanians watched on television and saw her as a cold and furious figure, still clinging to power as the country erupted. On December 22nd, the Ceausescus fled Bucharest in a helicopter, only to be captured within hours. 3 days later, they were brought before a hastily arranged military tribunal, and the trial lasted barely an hour. Both Nicolae and Elena were charged with genocide, corruption, and undermining the economy. Elena's behaviour during the trial confirmed the hatred many felt. She raged at the judges, refusing to recognise their authority. She called them traitors, screamed at soldiers, and insisted she would not answer lies. When asked to state her identity, she declared, "I am the mother of the nation." To Romanians watching later broadcasts, her arrogance in the face of overwhelming evidence was the final straw. And then, on December 25th, 1989, Elena and Nicolae were executed by firing squad in Targovstis. Elena reportedly shouted defiance until the final moment. After their deaths, Romanians did not mourn. Instead, there was relief, even celebration. The Ceausescu's fall marked the end of decades of oppression, hunger and fear. For many, Elena embodied the worst of the regime. She was remembered not as a motherly figure, but as a cruel, vain and grasping woman who had cared nothing for her people. In the years since, historians and witnesses have confirmed her reputation. Elena's falsified scientific career, her corruption, her role in enforcing brutal policies, and her contempt for ordinary citizens ensured she would be remembered as one of the most hated women of the 20th century. Elena Ceausescu's journey from peasant girl to mother of the nation is a story of ruthless ambition, unchecked corruption, and catastrophic arrogance. She became hated by 20 million people, not simply because she was married to a dictator, but because she was an active architect of their suffering. She helped enforce policies that starved the population, fostered corruption on a massive scale, humiliated subordinates, and supported a regime of terror. When Romanians finally rose up in 1989, their fury was directed at both Nicolae and Elena. Her downfall was swift and brutal, reflecting the depth of loathing she inspired. And today, Elena Ceausescu stands as a reminder of how power, when combined with vanity and cruelty, can turn a leader into the most despised figure in a nation's history. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And again, thank you so much for watching.